Jennifer, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today. As I'd like to do at the beginning of every podcast interview, if you'd be so kind enough to introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Greg. It's so nice to finally meet you. My name is Jennifer Fisher. I am the founder and chief creative officer of Jennifer Fisher. Was Jennifer Fisher Jewelry. Now it's Jennifer Fisher because we are more than one thing, but mainly jewelry. I've been doing this for about 18 years now. We are a self-funded, bootstrapped company. I work with my husband, Kevin Fisher, who you know, and the reason that I'm here. And we do fine jewelry, costume jewelry. We dabble in salt and other things, which we'll discuss. But mainly, I am a creative officer for Jennifer Fisher Jewelry, and my day-to-day is designing jewelry.
Thanks again for being with us. I think people who may be listening and some who don't may think, okay, Jennifer Fisher, she's the queen of hoops, according to the New York Times, right? She's got hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers. She's got a CB2 collection. She's got salts. She's got jewelry on every famous, actress or performer. So that's this. But I want to go back to 18 years ago. I want to go back to where it started so that we can really capture the essence, because as I'm doing on this podcast, I'm trying to demystify the founder business owner experience, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it takes to get to where someone is.
There is. People think it's really easy and it's not.
And that's what I'm trying to get the essence of. So if we can rewind 18 years ago, I think from my research, you were doing commercial designing. Is that right?
I was a wardrobe stylist for commercials. So what that means is, well, first of all, let me just go back a little bit further. So I studied business marketing at USC. I thought that I wanted to be a publisher of a magazine until I went to have my first internship at school. And I realized that was absolutely not what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be on the fashion side of the magazine. I grew up loving fashion. I was one of those kids that wallpapered my walls with, Vogue magazine covers. And I always loved to shop, and I was always into fashion and what was coming next. When I graduated school, I ended up it was literally by accident, sort of how my jewelry brand started. I fell into becoming a commercial wardrobe stylist, having not any experience doing it. I was given the opportunity to style one commercial for a very large director in Los Angeles at one of the biggest production companies, and I did a good job. And so he hired me to be his stylist. And I worked for 10 years in Los Angeles as a commercial wardrobe stylist without an agent or a manager. Relationships are everything. I really realized at that point too. And we'll talk about that later when we talk about, female founders and business, and we get into me as a jewelry designer a little bit more. But I had some health issues. I met my husband, Kevin, when I was here in New York on a job and also visiting. And I was diagnosed with something called a desmoid tumor, which is a soft tissue sarcoma. It's not breast cancer. And I went through chemotherapy for it while I was just dating Kevin at the time. He proposed to me when I was halfway through chemotherapy. I finished chemotherapy. We got married about a year after. And when we wanted to have children, my oncologist said, absolutely not. You need to get an egg donor or adopt or a surrogate because your tumor grows from estrogen. So we spent a couple of years through surrogacy. It was unsuccessful. IVF, unsuccessful. And I ended up getting pregnant naturally with my son, Shane, after years of trying, still styling through all of this and working in fashion. I got pregnant, totally healthy pregnancy. My tumor did not grow. And when Shane was born, I was being given gifts to represent him that I didn't feel really captured my personal style or were quite edgy enough for what I wanted to really be wearing. And I wanted his full name on a charm. I didn't just want something that felt one note that you could just go in a store and, I'd walk down the street and see six other women wearing the same necklace. I wanted something that felt really special and bespoke. So being a resourceful wardrobe stylist, I went up to the jewelry district and knocked on doors, and I found someone to make me my first charm, which was a dog tag, and it said Shane. And I wanted to wear it something, similar to this on a heavy gold chain. And, at the time people were, I collected charms my entire life, but charms were really not being worn on chains as necklaces. They were being worn as bracelets. And people thought I was kind of crazy until I started wearing it. And I would wear it on set when I was a stylist. And literally people that worked on the set would come up to me and say, oh my gosh, what does that say? It was this instant conversation piece. And I would explain to everybody it was my son. And everybody would say, really 9 times out of 10, can you make one for my wife? Or can you make one for my sister? Or can you make one for so-and-so? And I literally started making them while I was a wardrobe stylist on set. And one day I made one for Thurman, the actress, and she got it delivered the day she was shooting a Glamour magazine cover. And she wore it on the cover of Glamour. It was very helpful. But I mean, listen, that wasn't everything. That was just a moment in time.
Right.
Right. And it's just sort of, other celebrity moms started asking for them and wearing them and buying them. And one day, Kevin, who worked in finance still, and came into our bedroom in Soho, and there was orders strewn all over the bed. And he said, Jen, this is a real business. You need to start a website. So I started a website selling.
Right, and you said what? And you said what when he said, you got to start a website? I
said, great, let's do it. I have this real entrepreneur my entire life. I was the kid that would pick flowers out of your backyard and knock on the front door and resell you a bouquet. Like, I was that kid. So I always have been into starting businesses. So I thought, great. And back then, no one was really selling customizable fine jewelry online that way, the way that, I do my business. So we did it, and people just started ordering it. It was great. And I, working in fashion, always wanted to be recognized a little bit more in the fashion world. I wanted to be on the cover of magazines. So, we initially started the company fine jewelry only. And when I wanted to get recognized a little bit more in the fashion world, I started making larger pieces, because charms, back then and still today, are not really the things that you put onto magazine covers all the time. They wanted things that were a little more fashion forward, a little more architectural. So I started making things in 18 karat gold that were costing me tens of thousands of dollars. But when I was doing it and making these larger pieces, I was making it into those magazine stories. I was making it on those onto the covers, and that was working for us. But I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. It's more, that's more efficient. So we started doing it in brass, and literally the business kind of exploded in a different way, because we were then being recognized in the fashion world. And then we were also being recognized as the bespoke jewelry. And we had this combination of things, and it was working. And literally the business is just, snowballed, bootstrapped over the years. We literally started this company with like $3,000 of my own money that I had saved up from when I was a stylist. It didn't cost much to get it started, but over the years, we've, invested a lot of cash back into the business.
So let me hit pause, because you're passionate about fashion, but did you have any experience in jewelry?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No, and I am not, I sketch and design all of the jewelry to this day. I'm the designer, but I'm not doing the CADs or the hand waxes and things like that for the jewelry, but I've figured it out.
So when you launched the website, are you still working as a commercial stylist at that point?
Yes, but not for much longer. At that point, once we had launched the site, it was, and it actually worked out well. I had my young son. I was pregnant 6 months after with our daughter, Drew. It worked out very well. I was able to run this business, as a stay-at-home mom in the beginning, to be around my kids, and it worked out really well. I just realized really quickly that the, 2 a.m. on set wasn't going to work for me any longer with having two children. And we just started to grow it just naturally by me wanting to stay home and be with the kids.
And how do you then hire your first folks?
So, okay, when we got a little bit larger, I had my first office on Prince Street in Soho. We had to get it out of the house because it was getting to be a little bit too much. And I started off, there was this one girl that I started that was working with me in the jewelry district, sort of as my assistant and liaison between my little tiny studio in Soho. And, listen, I am not, and I have this conversation with my husband, Kevin, all the time. I don't think that I am the best. I'm definitely more the creative, not the ops person. I definitely think, when you're growing your company and you first start, having not worked in growing a business of this size before and running a website and having to do the, fulfillment, production, PR, everything, we slowly just started hiring employees, but they were junior employees to begin with. We're in a position now, right, where we are trying to transform the business from where, I had made a lot of hires. We still have some of those people that work for us still to this day and still manufacture for us, but it's been an interesting transition over the years, moving into having, employees that have different skill sets than what I initially hired, because
you didn't know what you didn't know about building a business.
I didn't know anything about building a business. I just knew I used my intuition to do what I thought was right. And some of those things were right and some of those things were not. And you learn as a business owner. And there's no way you're going to learn unless you make those mistakes.
But some of those, by the way, could be extremely costly to the point where it could actually could end the business. So if you go back to at the beginning, when you're opening your first office, which probably was that a scary endeavor?
No, it was great. It was this tiny office. And I quickly outgrew that first office and moved into my second office, which was in Soho also, but it was a lot of businesses sort of our size and larger. It's this building that's in Soho. It's sort of known for other people that sort of have about, up to 10 employees.
Right.
We moved into that, and then we outgrew that. And then we moved to another office with more employees that actually turned out by default to become our first retail showroom store. On the second floor on Fifth Avenue, which really was intended to just be our offices. But due to demand of people wanting to see the jewelry in a retail space, we decided, I was holding editor meetings there when, editors would come in and do their, every season for the magazine, sort of do a walkthrough of what we were showing for that season. And it sort of just turned into a store. And it ended up being the best retail, sort of experiment, because we didn't have to spend the money for a ground floor brick and mortar store with the same, retail strategy and what we have right now, having our store in Soho and Beverly Hills. We were able to sort of test the market, which was actually worked out really well before we opened our first ground floor store.
When you first made that move into opening an office, I guess I'm curious, two things. Was there anyone who said, no, you can't do this, or what are you doing? This is crazy. You don't know anything about jewelry?
No, I never had that said to me specifically. But what I did have many, many times was magazines and editors and people saying to me, you're never going to make it making charm jewelry. This is not fashion. You're never going to make it. This
Why?
is not. Because they felt that it was not fashion forward enough to be placed on magazine covers. But what's so interesting is you see some of those people today, and they're in much different positions, and they come back around. And it's interesting how you can be told no sometimes by the same group of people, but then once you enlighten them or they see you differently, they come back in a different way. I've seen that a lot. Fashion is a fickle, interesting place to work in.
But that must have been very interesting. Here you are, somebody who's not coming from the jewelry industry, who's being told no a bunch of times. That must have created some sort of self-doubt.
Self-doubt is daily, but the self-doubt that I feel like I've got leather skin now. I was told, I always say, if I have $1 for every time someone told me no, I'd be a billionaire. I was told no constantly for your reason of what you're talking about, not being a jewelry industry expert or being trained in jewelry, but also just trying to make it in business in general.
How did you, as Jennifer, overcome all of the no's? Where does that come from?
I don't take no as an answer.
Why?
My father, I was instilled in me since I was a child. I was taught to work very hard and see the rewards. And you are going to have some bad days, and people are not going to believe in you. And that's okay. But other people will. I think it's just will and might. And I always say the hustle is innate. That's one thing that I always love to say. And my father taught me that very young. And I think I'm a hustler. And I think that you can, there's 1 million people that are going to love you. There's 10 million people who are going to hate you, or vice versa.
Right.
I think that people have to understand, being an entrepreneur, being a female entrepreneur, working in fashion, I didn't pick an easy business to go into, but I find it incredibly rewarding because I get to solve those issues every day of people not believing in me or what I do or my product. You
had mentioned your dad giving you that quality. So what was it about him or how you grew up in Montecito that gave you that spirit?
My dad was kind of a cowboy. I was very lucky. We came from a middle-class family. That town is known for being, that town, but we lived there before, it was Oprah and Spielberg. We lived there when it was a smaller, sleepy beach town. And my grandfather was a polo player and a silversmith. And I would watch him make jewelry sitting on the washer and dryer in my parents' garage. And my father redid Spanish estates in Santa Barbara, and we'd move around to each one when he would do that. And he always made sure that my grandfather, who wore a cowboy hat every day, would come in and have a space to make his silver jewelry. And he was making rodeo buckles and bolo ties and collar stays and money clips for all those guys. And I would watch them do it. And there was a grit to it. And there was something that I think my father and my grandfather just both instilled in me. And maybe it's, people sometimes do say, oh, you're masculine or you're tough. And I take that as a huge compliment. I think that I am resilient. I am able to see sort of through the clouds, so to speak. I see the challenges ahead. And right now, even in my business today, we're in we'll get to this later, but we're in a tough spot right now. You're raising capital. There's things that come every day. There's challenges. It's like being a parent, Greg. It's just like that. There's things every single day that are going to make you doubt yourself or your decisions or what you're doing. And I think I truly believe I am doing what I am meant to be doing for a living. And there's something in that that's very satisfying, that I know that I'm going to fight for it.
And when you think about Shane and Drew and what's in still for them in their lives, how do you feel if they came to you and said they wanted to be business owners?
I love that. I think that's amazing. I think the one thing that we try to instill in our kids is that you should be whatever you want to be. You don't have to take over mom and dad's business if you don't want to. You should go and do whatever you want to do with your life. Right. And that's what my parents said to me. I never felt any pressure to do anything by my parents. All I was pressured to was to be myself and to be happy.
That's a wonderful gift to be able to give to your children.
And I realized how fortunate I was that I had that from them.
Yeah, because that can be very freeing. I'd argue that a lot of people don't take risks because of the expectations that they have, or they feel they have towards others, or things that they have to do or not do as a result.
I think and I watched my father fail a lot. And when my father would fail, he would never really take it as a negative. He would teach us. And I was the youngest, so I was around more. My brothers were out of the house, and I would see it. And I would see, he would say, well, the next adventure, we're on to the next adventure. So
how would he fail?
Just in business, I knew there were things that didn't go right, and they were pretty open about, things when they didn't. There were a lot of things actually that didn't go well as I was growing up with my father, ups and downs with my parents financially. But I watched them go through it, learning, I think, the resilience of watching people come back from things. And that I think, as a parent, to show your kids that is a really, really important lesson in just life. Life is not perfect. Life is not always, it's not going to be perfect vacations and everything all the time. Life is, for us working parents, it's not perfect all the time. And I saw that with my parents, and I respect it. And I think our kids respect Kevin and myself for this as well. And then college last weekend, that was interesting.
I was thinking about being a parent and equating that to being a business owner and a leader, and how you handle those ups and downs with your team, how you even out the ship when things don't go well. So how do you do that for your team to make sure that it's not, that they understand that there are rough times, and that they also, and how do you capture the fact that where you are now is not where you were 12 years ago?
Well, that's interesting. We've gotten people have watched us evolve and watch the brand change and grow. And I think all we can be is, just positive for all of our employees. When you are a self-funded smaller business like us, things are not perfect all the time. And we are very entrepreneurial in spirit. And some employees love it and some employees don't. And that's another thing with employees. You find the ones that see your vision and see where you're going and want to be a part of that. And then you see some that don't, and that's okay.
But I imagine it's very hard capturing that. Number one, capture the culture when you're bringing on people for those who have been with you for a long time. Mm-hmm. And number two, how is the transition for you of relinquishing control as you grew to recognize that there were other folks that needed to be in seats in roles that you couldn't fill?
Well, I think it's important to note here where I think sometimes the employees that we've had for a long time and the older culture of the company might not be where we want to be or need to be right now. And that's tricky too, is taking the older employees that have been there for the older culture, less management, more entrepreneurial spirit from when we first started, and transitioning now into, we have a CRO, a CMO, we have, there's more adults in the room, so to speak. And some employees don't love that. They're used to the wild, wild west of what it used to be before we had the guardrails on. And I think that that's also important to note, that it's hard. Some of the employees will stay and some of them will go, but we have to do what's best for the infrastructure of the business.
But that might also be very hard for you as well. That there isn't, team aside, for yourself, if it was the wild, wild west before and you could just pivot to this or create that, and now, I don't know.
It's a constant.
Do people say no now?
Oh, it's so hard, Greg. It is. It's a constant struggle. I don't want to say fight, struggle with my husband daily, who is, the COO and president. And it's, I can't. I like being the head cowgirl, and I can't any longer. And that's really difficult for me, having to be one of the employees that are now put, into the guardrails and into where we need to go for the greater good of the business. I can't design or manage the way that I used to. And it's, there's something about it that's really nice to have to change and make that shift in order to grow. It is hard, and it's hard to get used to the new ways of doing things. I used to be able to design a piece of jewelry and get it into the market within 3 months. Now it's a year. My design schedule has changed. We used to design too much jewelry. We used to design for the fashion calendar. We don't really need to do that any longer. We used to show our jewelry in Paris. We used to do a lot of things that we don't and can't and really just shouldn't be doing any longer. So there's a lot of shifts for all of us. It's not just for my employees, it's for myself too. And I was doing an edit on a product last night, and it's a little too late to do the edit. So there's things that we all have to get used to as we grow.
And as you're mentioning all of the different things that you want to do, you've also broadened your horizons, and as far as the brand and the business, to move into things like salts and do things like a CB2 collaboration. So my question is, how do you weigh all of those things and juggle all those things, and how do you to make sure that you don't get lost and sort of distracted by the next shiny object, no pun intended, to stay core to the business?
Well, let me be really clear about the salt and how that started, first of all. So for those of the people that don't really know about the salt and how that happened. So I literally started the salt the way that I started the jewelry brand. There was something that I could not find in the market that I just created myself. It was a custom salt blend that I would keep on the side of my stove, and I would use it in everything. And Kevin was literally like, "This is delicious. What are you doing?" And I said, "It's that salt blend that I made on the side that's on the side of the stove." And as one did, I was an early adapter to Instagram. And back in the day, as one was putting their avocado toast on Instagram, I too put my avocado egg toast on Instagram on my jewelry account. And I say this all the time. It's a funny story. I got more, and at the time there were not DMs, it was comments. I got more comments as to, what was it that what is on your egg avocado than to what hoops Rihanna had on in the photo before it. It was something that resonated with the public.
Right.
And I would explain to people what it was, and editors saw it, and people were asking about it, and people wanted to know more about it. And we did it as an editor gifting one year. And it was literally, Greg, I got more thank you notes from editor-in-chiefs of magazines that, for those who work in fashion, know that that's very rare to get one of those. And I got one from the biggest one, and saying how amazing it was, and how can we write about it, and where can we buy it? And I looked at Kevin one day and I said, "I think we need to package this." So it wasn't one of those things where I'm a jewelry designer and now I'm just going to get into salts. So it's not like I'm all over the place. It just happened, and we created the product. We started to sell the product, and we sell a lot of salt. So it's one of those things. I have a kitchen Instagram that's Jennifer Fisher Kitchen, where I cook. I have some health issues also, other than my tumor. I have an autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's. So I eat specifically for that, anti-inflammatory as well.
My mother has that as well.
She should be eating the way that I do, and we should send her some salts. It's just fewer simple, cleaner sort of foods. And there's a huge audience for that. And that audience also likes to then go and buy jewelry, we found also. So there's a nice percentage of people that follow me for my food and salt that then go to buy jewelry. I always say there's sort of a method to my madness. There's a method to the fact that we did get, even though in the beginning we didn't have the money to market and to pay celebrities to wear our jewelry, we still to this day do not. But I made sure that my plan and my focus of marketing for the business as a smaller company was to make sure that we got those earrings to those celebrities. So it's all marketing, and there's all a greater plan for it. It's just what I found is by me staying true to who I am, and okay, yes, I have these health issues, and so this is what I do, and sharing it with people, that works. CB2 came along the same way. They were following me. They came to us. They saw the way that I live my life and my lifestyle, and they were intrigued by it. And that's how that collaboration happened. They still sell our salt and our goods to this day. We ended up doing 3 collaborations with them. It was so successful.
So my takeaway is you made yourself vulnerable, and you put yourself out there into the world. And
you have to.
Well, that's very hard for a lot of people.
That's what I try to help people with every day. I try to talk to lots of different types of people every day about not being scared to put yourself out there, not being scared to fail.
What are the objections? What are the objections when you have those conversations? What are people afraid?
I'm just too scared. I'm scared to be embarrassed. I'm scared that, my family is not going to want me to do it. I'm scared because I'm not sure of what this product is or how I want to do it. I just know I want to do something. I think a lot of people get caught up in the idea of how large it feels to start a brand or a company. I think what you have to do is just take it apart, unbox it, as Kevin loves to say, and sort of just put one foot in front of the other and start doing something towards your goal. And you don't have to achieve your goal in a year. You don't have to achieve your goal in a week. You just start putting one foot in front of the other, trying to go towards that goal of what you want. And it's going to change. That's another thing that people have to understand. You might think that you're going to go out there and you're going to be one thing. That is not always the case. Did I ever expect that I would be a jewelry brand that makes salt and is now in lifestyle and other things like that? Absolutely not. Look how I started. I thought I was going to be a magazine publisher, and look where I am now. And I think it's about trusting your instincts of where sort of, and I, not to get woo-woo on this because this is a business podcast, but to sort of trust the universe and where you're being pushed and where you are being directed. I always think that and I look back at so many times that I've been told no, and how grateful I am that I was told no, and that opportunity did not work, because I would not be where I am today had that gone the way that I thought it was supposed to go.
The first thing that stuck out at me is, so I had a woman who, her name is Rachel Glass. She has a company called Gloss Lab. They're nail salons around the city. And she was talking about the importance of trusting your gut, just really trusting your gut. And so it's just really interesting that here you are talking about the intuition, the power of that intuition.
It's funny. It's like dating. It's sort of like, I say this all the time. It's one of those things like, if I say this to girls, if that you have those red flags, if you shouldn't be dating that person, you see, you just choose to ignore them. Mm-hmm. In life, there's decisions that you make. And it's that trusting that inner voice and that intuition. I think it's such a good navigation for you to be guided by that, because I really do believe 9 times out of 10, had you listened to that, I use this as an example all the time. I've been given a lot of advice by big people in fashion, and it was not the best advice for my company. And I knew it, but I felt I had to listen to it because it came from that person. And I think that's another thing as an entrepreneur and a business owner, that you can listen to it, take that information, but you don't necessarily have to apply it in the way that person is telling you to apply it, because that person is, at the end of it, they're not building a company the way you are. They don't have the same vision of you. They don't have the same experiences of life growing up, the way that you're going to take rejection and positive things. It's your business, and you have to listen to yourself.
I'm just smiling because I'm reading a book now by Alan Cohen. It's called Enough Already. It's about the search of radical contentment, and it's about how we all know everything that we need to know already in us, instead of searching outside. So I just thought that was really interesting, because it's exactly what you're saying.
I do believe in mentorship, and I do believe in listening to people that have built larger brands and businesses, because they have had similar experiences. I know
you're not saying that. I know you're not saying that there are people who can't share their experiences that you can gain from.
Right. I'm not saying that. I am saying that when you do take that information in, that you process it and put it to use for you.
And so you talk about mentorship, and I'd imagine there are plenty of folks who reach out to you for advice. So I'd love to hear from you what you wish you knew then that you know now, 18 years later of starting the business.
Oh gosh, there's so much, Greg. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think the most important thing is what we were just discussing, is that you really need to trust your intuition and your gut.
Right.
It really is the most important tool that you have. It's your inner compass.
And what do you think is the biggest misconception of new business owners?
I get this all the time, and it's so funny. And I don't want to say it's youth, but I get a lot of messages from people that are younger individuals that are wanting to start a jewelry brand and think that they can do it overnight via social media. I think that's a huge misconception. And also when I laugh when they reach out and they say, oh, can I have your vendors on how to do this, and this? I'm going to start a jewelry brand. I'm like, sure, good luck. It's a lot of work. I mean, it is so much rejection. It is so much hard work. It is blood, sweat, and tears, literally constantly. And through all phases of growth. It's not like it gets easier. It gets harder.
Why does it get harder?
I think when you have more employees, when you have, we have retail, we're an omni-channel brand. And, we're growing wholesale. We are going through, having to manufacture a product, domestically is very difficult when you get to a certain stage. It's a lot of things that I wish we had worked on earlier, but there's no way we would have known. It's those sort of things that sometimes it's harder when you're dealing with, we've just got more. So more to me is more daily things that we have to overcome and deal with. Capital raising, manufacturing, quality control. There's so much that goes into it that people have no idea how much work it is.
I want to get to the capital raising, but I wanted to ask you, there have been tons of no's along the way. Can you share some of those memorable no's?
Oh gosh, there's so many, but I'll never forget when I was sitting outside of Vogue magazine. And like I said, it was that one editor said to me, you'll never be in this magazine. Well, I've been on the cover, multiple times now we have, and without being an advertiser. I mean, things have changed now, and the business and publishing world is very different now. I was lucky to have been around before things changed, and it's been fun to evolve through all this. There's no's constantly. I mean, there's no's from everybody. There's no's from people that you want to be retail partners with, but then sometimes they'll come back, and it's one of those things too. Like I say, it's the universe protecting you in some ways. Had I taken maybe that larger retailer earlier, maybe we wouldn't have been able to handle the capacity of how we had to manufacture and deliver goods. Right. So there's all these things that you think at the time, oh, it's horrible. But now it's great because we're larger now. And at the time, had I done it, 16 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been successful as we are now. So that's the things, but you don't know those things until you're there.
Sure.
The key is getting through all of these no's, being resilient enough to come back from all of those no's, learning from those no's, and trusting that those no's are guiding you.
On the topic of no's and then fundraising, so I would imagine that has been an interest. Here you are at an interesting point in your business. You did sales, you're doing sales, you're selling yourself, but could you share with us what the experience of capital raising has been like and what you thought it would be like versus what it is?
Well, I thought it'd be much easier. I think everybody thinks that. And the key, I think, is raising capital before you need it. That's the key. It's tough. There's so many things to consider and to learn going through this process of whatever mode you end up raising your capital or what you end up doing. I don't think you're ever really truly prepared to go through it. And the feedback of that is interesting too, of the no's and the people that want to see you. They envision you to become something that maybe you don't really want to become. They envision you to become something that's a spinoff of something that they already have that maybe might not be right for you. So it's like a series of auditions, so to speak, hearing from people positive and negatives about your brand. So that's another thing that you have to take going into fundraising in a business, is being able to take that feedback also. And it's a very interesting ride. It's kind of fun, but it's also stressful. But it's interesting to see people's takes of, outside views of people that are familiar with your brand and the people that are not also maybe so familiar with your brand.
And it's your baby, right? It
is your baby, and you can't take anything. That's another thing in business. I try to not take anything too personally. Like you just can't. No one is going to see your baby and your business the way that you do. No one is. Right. Maybe you'll find a partner that sees it exactly as you see it, but I don't know.
So because you mentioned the word partner, you have a partner and you have a husband. It seems to me that when you're a business owner, it's all encompassing. It's 24/7, right? And you have to be really good at compartmentalizing.
Right.
So
and really hard when it's your spouse.
That's right. So I'm just curious to hear how you're able to achieve that.
We don't do a very good job of it, to be honest. It's really hard. I'm just being honest. It's really difficult. We work in two separate offices. And so at the end of our day, sometimes we are not speaking the entire day because we're not on the same calls or meetings. And so at the end of the day, sometimes dinner time is really the only time we have to catch up. And that's really hard. And we make we vows to each other that we're not going to bring work home. Well, that's impossible if you're a couple working together. It just is. Something comes up in the topic of work or what's gone on and what you were going through for that day, or, where we're going, it comes up. And I think, the greatest thing about Kevin is that he's sort of the yin to my yang. He is a great communicator. He is very calm. He likes to see the vision and to, like I say, unpack this and go through steps, where I'm much more like, let's just do this. This is what I want to do. And he's amazing, where he sits down and like, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk this through. So I think we have a really good working relationship. It is really hard to be married to your partner. It is. But I think it's harder for me than it is for him. If you asked him, he'd be like, it's fine. Maybe it's just I'm more emotional about it. Maybe I'm the creative. That's what I get to use as an excuse all the time. I'm the creative.
It seemed like it resonated with you when I was saying that it's all encompassing. And I've also heard a lot of founders say that it's quite lonely.
Very. So funny you said that. I had a conversation this morning with another female founder about this.
Could you share why? Why is it lonely?
It's just funny that you said that, because we had this conversation. It's very lonely because, you're like, it is all encompassing all day long. And when you break away from it at the end of your day or to socialize, there's not a lot of people, at least in my circle, that are in the same position as myself. I also think that I've recently started to branch out and find other supportive female founders. I don't think on a whole, at least in the jewelry business, there's a ton of supportive, I don't like to use the word competitors, but contemporaries in my circle. So I look outside of that. And I'm recently started to collect a few, and they've collected me, of just, we all do something a little bit different, but we're realizing how difficult it is to do this job at this level and feel supported.
I imagine that's a bit of a struggle you're saying that they do things a little different, but I would imagine in some instances they could be competition. So I could see how you couldn't necessarily collaborate. You couldn't necessarily be vulnerable, share yourself with folks who are also in your industry. So you probably have to go outside of your industry.
You can. I just think a lot of people are not willing to do it. I would do it, but I haven't really found anyone else that's willing to do it. I think that you have to have a certain level of self-confidence to do so. Maybe it's just not that I'm more self-confident than other people in my business. I'm not saying that. I just think it's interesting that it's difficult to find others. You would think it'd be easier, but it is lonely. Sometimes at the end of my day, I would like to see some people, but they've already been out, or they've already made other plans, because I have to say no all the time because I'm busy. It's tricky. It's hard. And a lot of people that are doing the same thing I'm doing, they're traveling, their schedule is booked, they're doing something. We've all got dinners that are work dinners. We're trying to find times to come together. I'm excited. I get to go to a dinner on Tuesday, actually out in the Hamptons, with a bunch of other female founders for the end of summer. It's a female women in business dinner. I'm excited to go to that. So anytime I have the opportunity to go and meet other women that are, in business and similar levels, it's exciting and it's fun.
We may have touched on this, but I was talking about what you wish you knew then that you know now, but it's in a different, what is, and maybe I already know the answer, but it's the mistakes that you felt were necessary for your growth and development. What mistake did you need to make that you felt helped propel you to get where you are?
So many mistakes. Well, I had to make so many mistakes. I had to fail miserably in so many things, I think, in order to get where I am. I said this earlier on, there's things like I feel like I've been guided by those things, that there's those no's that I've received through all of this.
But I say that because failure, a lot of people say, oh, failure is great because you can fail forward, right? But then I had this guy on, his name's Kevin Gerhardt, who runs Rehab Medical. And he's like, failure sucks. He's like, let's be honest. And some of those failures that you might make might be the end of you if you failed.
Right. That's true. I haven't had that yet. Fortunately, that could come tomorrow or today. I hope not.
But that's the risk. That's the risk you take with being an entrepreneur.
Exactly. I think you have to, and people ask me this all the time, why do you do it? And I think you have to really love it. I think you have to really love the idea that at any moment you could be done. I think it's living completely fearless in what you're doing, because I do know if I failed, and I say this all the time, if we sold, even if not even about failure, if we sold the business, I would get up and I would do something else. I love what I do so much. I love the risk. I love the chase. I love the idea of it not being given to me. I love it. It's something to work for constantly. And so that's what I always say, like the hustle is innate. It's those things. I think that you have to really want it.
Does that ever exhaust you to a point where you think, all right, what am I doing?
Constantly.
But
Absolutely. And yesterday, I have to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. Yesterday was a low for me. I dropped my son at college last weekend. I had a few days in the office. I just didn't feel great. Yesterday, I felt really low. And so I knew what I needed to do. I knew I needed to get a really good night's sleep. All of my friends were like, let's go out and have some drinks. I knew that was not what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to do was to stay home, rest. And I woke up feeling completely differently today. I feel like a different person today.
And you're going to put one foot in front of the other.
And I said to Kevin last night, I said, I'm not feeling great tonight. I'm going to go to sleep early. And I know I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be okay. And I know what I need to do at this point. I've been doing this long enough that if you feel down, the key is not to, go and numb yourself out. The key is to recharge yourself to where you can be more, if not more productive the next day than in the prior days. The key is to sort of nourish and feed yourself and to give yourself the rest that you need so that you can mentally and physically come back.
Especially because you're juggling so many things. You're juggling so many things.
So many things. I'm a mother. I'm a self-founded female founder of this brand with 40 plus employees. It's difficult, but I love it. But
also it's important to step back and congratulate yourself for what you've accomplished. Not to say that you're resting on your laurels, but to recognize what you've been able to achieve to this point. And that's probably also very hard to do.
It is hard to do because you're constantly chasing what's next. And so we have to learn to slow down and to acknowledge the work that we've put in and what we've built.
And that should also feed on to one, and no matter what role they're in, the confidence that they can continue on and to build on that.
Exactly.
But it's very easy. The mind is such that we think about the thing that we're not going to do, or the thing that the thing that's going to be taken away, rather than the thing that can be additive.
You just can't look at it that way. It's not about taking it away. It's about learning from it and moving forward.
Right.
And like you said, it's one foot in front of the other. And it's
right.
In order to gain or win or build anything, you have to take a million steps back first.
Well, this has been wonderful. I'm looking at my notes to see if there's anything that I may have missed, but I'd love to give you the opportunity in case there's anything that you haven't been able to share or that you want to share with folks.
I feel like you did a really good job, Greg. I feel like this was all encompassing. We talked about everything.
How do people find Jennifer Fisher? I love what you've built, and I love watching your business and grow and prosper. So how do people find you and the brand?
Well, our website is jenniferfisher.com. My jewelry Instagram is Jennifer Fisher Jewelry. My kitchen, if you're interested in salts and food, and I cook dinner there live pretty much every night, is Jennifer Fisher Kitchen. And our salts are available on the website and in our retail stores. So you can try it. And we'll give out samples if you guys want to give it a try.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. This has been really wonderful.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice to finally meet you.
You as well.